So Siobhan has just moved here or is moving here in the process of moving back. It worked out that she'd be here tonight. So big thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I think I have the dubious honor of representing the other end of the spectrum. So how many of you in the room have heard of Ernst & Young? How many of you know that we are in the cybersecurity world? Yeah, fewer hands. So we have approximately 210,000 people worldwide. We operate in over 50 countries, and we're adding, just on the intern side, 15,000 this year. So a little bit bigger. I get to run the really cool practice at Ernst & Young. A practice we've launched called Cyber Economics, which sits in our broader business risk division. And what we look at in that practice is a convergence of a couple of things. So you're all probably familiar with us being an audit firm and sitting on all that kind of information. We also do a lot of business risk and business transformation consulting. That brings along cybersecurity requirements with it. So one of the things that we looked at was how do we figure out if there are trends that we're seeing. So you just spoke about trends in the industry. We represent every sector, every industry out there from our clients' perspective. They're looking at the theft of intellectual property. They're looking at the manipulation of economic data for gain in the market. They're looking at data breaches of credit card information and financial information. And they're also dealing with, in many cases, some of the breaches on social networks where we're actually starting to see phishing attempts on those social networks to get into corporate networks. So I'll talk a bit about our cyber economics practice and what we do. We look at the convergence of three things. The first being traditional threat intelligence. We look at economic anomalies across the business. So what do I mean by that? Does accounts receivable match accounts payable? And does your order number match the number of things that were ordered? And then we overlay a geopolitical lens on that. In what particular area of the world are you operating? Who are your competitors in that area, and what would they stand to gain from it? So looking at the why somebody might get breached. So a trivia question. On average, how long do you think our clients, and keep in mind mainly Fortune 500 companies, are compromised before somebody finds them on their system? Anybody want to throw out a guess? 200 days on average. But that's on average, right? So somebody's sitting in their networks for 200 days before they know about it. Think of the damage that can happen in that time. If you think about the information that we're protecting on the financial side of things, you know, we have results of companies, public results of companies that are public before they go out. So the sensitivities of, you know, what would happen if that information were to get out into the public is something that obviously led us into this area. Cyber economics is a really exciting practice. Like everybody else, we're hiring as well. And so if you're interested, let me know. It's a little bit different than that you're looking at business risk across the entire business, and cyber is really the means of compromise. So it's not specifically a cyber threat, although it may be done through that means. So we're asking companies, and typically the people who are buying and who we're servicing in this area are boards of directors, they're audit committees, and they are the C-suite of these big companies, trying to understand, how do I evaluate the efficacy of the CIO or the CISO? How do I understand that we're doing the right things to protect ourselves from liability? So if you think about that, that's a little bit of a different sale than traditionally going in to sell at a CIO or a CISO level on a specific platform for cybersecurity. So when you take all of those things together and you look at the areas where they operate, we've mapped out playbooks of how the adversaries go about enticing companies, for instance, to go into certain geographies. So, hey, come to country X, Y, and Z. We'll give you some tax incentives. We'll give you some government incentives. We'll give you a couple of contracts here and there. We'll lure you in. And by doing that, we get your intellectual property. We're able to access that information. We understand how you work. And then that contract goes away. It makes it difficult for you to operate. And guess what? You're probably going to have to shut down that part of your business because it's not going to be effective for you to continue running it. At that point, they're compromising the system and they move to another country. So that's what we're following from this perspective. Again, it's a very exciting and new area. I say I have the coolest job because I get to work with the stability of having a really large company that's well-funded, but kind of running a startup inside of that company. And so, you know, those are kind of the areas as we look at how companies are thinking. We're talking about moving a data center to a different country. What impact does that have on your business? How do you need to start thinking about the geographic risk as well as the geopolitical risk associated with doing business in that country based on what we know about where the bad guys are perpetrating their bad activities. So that's a little bit about what we do. If you have any questions, I'm up here and happy to talk about it.
Cool. Thank you very much.